This episode, we talk about Hen's home and work life crashing and burning.
How Eddie is trying to gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss his way through his grief and anger.
And the 118's reaction to Hen and Eddie's crash outs.
Have you ever watched something that completely rewired your brain chemistry?
A procedural network drama might not be your usual pick, but it's ours.
This is The Buddie System, a 911 deep dive podcast hosted by three friends who have DM'd each other enough character dissertations to earn a PhD in media literacy.
I'm Han, coming to you straight from the characters' heads.
I'm Sil, bringing you to the observation deck.
And I'm Rachel, connecting the dots with my red string.
With our powers combined,
no stone is left unturned.
And no buddy is left behind.
This episode brought to you by Disney on Ice. Welcome to Dispatch. What's on call this week?
This week we are discussing Season 3, Episode 8, Malfunction, written by Tanya Kong, directed by Joaquin Cedillo, and the director of photography is Dwayne Milwaukee. We're going to start saying who the director of photography is now because I didn't realize that Andrew Mitchell wasn't the director of photography for all of 8.
Also upon request. So
more information. And this originally aired on November 11th, 2019.
All right, so we have 4 calls of the week. The first one is a very Grimm Brothers fairy tale on ice. And that is when I don't have this written out, so apologies in advance. But an ice show trips up, one might say, when a sequin falls and creates mass chaos and resulting in some severed fingers and a skate to the chest. Then we have future. Think of Squidward from SpongeBob.
I never understand a single SpongeBob reference you make.
I know, but this is for the people.
Okay.
I feel like I don't even remember this.
It's the one where they are in the time machine and they go to the future and everything's chrome. So then Squidward at some point just has a mental break and is like, future.
Oh.
One of my favorite episodes.
I distinctly remember hearing it. Wait, he goes to space, right? And he's on the moon?
Maybe?
Why the fuck is he in space?
Sandy, the squirrel, is an
astronaut.
An astronaut. So don't ask questions you don't want the answers to.
Okay.
Nothing makes sense.
Moving on.
Anyways, future, a la Squidward, where a man in a self-driving car experiences a heart attack and safely reroutes to the hospital. However, the car, being on autopilot, drives directly into the hospital. Then we have IP Robot, where workers in a warehouse are threatened by the robot presence about to take over their jobs. And one man relieves himself because they're not allowed to go to the bathroom. And then the robots malfunction. And the last one is Swan Song, where a young up-and-coming cellist whose first night performing in the Philharmonic gets derailed when she gets into a car crash with an ambulance driven none other by our very own Hen. All right, so
uplifting stuff.
I know, very uplifting. It's
love it here.
Most of these are funny, or half of them are funny, but there's still a very dark undertone. So, what did you guys think of this episode?
The one and only Aisha Hines. That's it. That's it. No, honestly, I love, these are very deep, impactful stories, especially for Hen and Eddie. They're both going through so much, and their individual emotional scenes, Eddie with Bobby, and then Hen and Karen, and Hen with what happens at the end, and with Athena. Those scenes really are so impactful and so memorable. Yeah, so the episode's very memorable. Never fail, and it never fails to make me cry at the end. That's it. That's a tweet.
Every time?
Every time. Lately, I always cry at the end. Because I watched it, this is the 3rd time I watched it, and I still cry.
Yeah, it's impactful, for sure. Yeah, this is an incredible episode. There's, so much going on. I know it's, mostly Hen and Eddie's like storyline. Like it's pretty much an A-B storyline, but there's little moments for everybody in it. It's done so well. Like everyone's acting because it carries a lot of like emotional weight as well. Like the funnies are so funny and the lows are so low. And it's also kind of interesting to watch this episode kind of after everything with 8 and like the second half of 8 to see how deeply unexpected tragedies affect our characters in this way as well. So just to kind of use like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and compare it with something like this where it's, you know, very much like out of people's control. I think that's a similar thing. I'll talk about that more in themes. But like it's interesting to look at both of those in that context.
Excellent episode. Pretty funny until it's depressing as fuck. Like, yeah. It's just the way it ends. And I'm like, oh my God. And like the way that we're watching it right now, like when I originally watched it, I binged it. So I was like, okay, let's see what happens next immediately. And like not be sitting in that moment. But because like I don't normally watch ahead in the rewatch for the podcast, I'm just like living in that moment at the end of the episode.
Yeah, because it just ends.
For a week. It just ends.
It really just leaves you.
Incredible fucking work by Aisha Hines, of course. Just astonishing the amount of like emotion that she can push through a TV screen and make you feel. And Ryan knocked this episode out of the park too. Like that scene with Bobby.
Did he knock it out?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think it's such a great ensemble episode. And I miss this kind of vibe so much where like, even though we really only had an A and B plot, there was such a huge focus on Hen and Eddie. We still touched base with everyone a little bit.
Everyone like was so involved.
Yes. And we had the little moment in the kitchen with Athena and Bobby. And then we have the moment in Buck's kitchen with Buck and Maddie and Chimney. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a great episode. The ending is a lot.
Great, but emotionally taxing.
Mm-hmm. It's a little like soul crushing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 1 minute. I'm going to time myself for 1 minute to complain about this.
Okay.
Why did the show make me more sad about this girl I knew for 2 minutes dying? Why did they make me more sad than that and show me everyone fucking reacting? And I don't know. I just feel like, why was that done so well? But Bobby dying?
Ugh.
The emotional impact was just like, why is it happening this way? I don't know. There, I only needed 30 seconds. Incredible.
I wish I had answers.
Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll find those answers when we get to our scene dissection.
Maybe.
Maybe. Oh yeah. True.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go for that.
All right. Put me out of my misery. I will willingly just put myself into the open jaws of life. We're gonna need the jaws of life over here. Just take me out.
Christ.
I'm so tired, you guys.
That's how I felt.
So tired
this morning.
I was like, I'm sorry, I can do the jaws of life by myself later.
No, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired. I'm just like really harshing my vibe, you know?
It's harshing your mellow. What
there
mellow?
Was no mellow to be found.
No.
I don't think mellow's a word people have ever used to describe me.
Fair. My bad. That was a transition. So it made me concerned.
For context, podcast listeners, I haven't slept that much in the past week.
I'm hungover.
So I'm still hungover. Even though it's like 5 p.m.
I'm here. Anyways.
Oh, and Rachel is also here.
Rachel is also here. Feeling fine. Having slept.
All right. I didn't find any press articles. There were a couple interviews with Aisha, but those are actually for next week.
Next episode. Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
I will talk about that then. I don't think we really have any for now. Again, if I miss anything and you know of a press article for specific episodes, send it to me, link them to us. So instead, we're going to talk a little bit about production stuff. So this is the second episode for 911 directed by Joaquin Cedillo. The first one that he did was 304, which was Triggers. That's when Buck was being Fire Marshal Buck and everything. And Joaquin Cedillo is also the director of photography. So I thought it was interesting too. And I'm glad we started including the director of photography for this episode, because I was like, well, wait, because Joaquin Cedillo is usually the director of photography. So like,
I was wondering that earlier. I was like, is he pulling double duty? Can you even physically do that?
I don't think you can. So I was like, okay, wait, so who actually is the director of photography? Because they have to shuffle that. So I realized it was Dwayne Milwaukee, and he's usually the camera operator, and he has some additional cinematographer credits. So he's been around for about like seasons 2 through 7. I'm not sure there was season 4 in there.
Was he the director of photography for 4 as well?
3 or 4?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So they had to shuffle that around a little bit, which I think is interesting. So it's like you're just moving some people around, but as a camera operator and additional cinematographer, that seems like a pretty easy role to fill. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, I think Cedillo really handles the tone shifts in this episode very well. And it's also written very well by Tanya Kong. So like the both of those handle it very well. So they're able to switch between like the humor of Bobby's figure skating stuff and the silliness of the warehouse robots and how like bizarre and just kind of stupid slapstick that is. And then like pivot to the action of Eddie's Fight Club stuff. But then you have all of that emotional devastation with Eddie and Hen and the ambulance crash. So it's like, it's so many different tonal genres, and it all comes together like very well.
So is the same writer, director, and DP for both this and Triggers?
Yes, I was just about to say Tanya Kong also wrote 304, so it's the same team like leading for both episodes.
So the only 2 episodes of OG she wrote. She wrote these 2 for OG, and she wrote 3 for Lone Star. Yeah, I really like these 2 episodes.
I really do too. I also saw in her IMDb that it makes sense that we like her stuff because she's credited as a story editor for season 3 of Daredevil, the Netflix version. And she wrote
My Heart
306 of Daredevil, which was the perfect game. For anyone who doesn't know, which I don't know why you wouldn't yet, we all love Marvel very much, and we are big fans of Daredevil. None more so than Han. But
that's my boy.
The episode that she wrote was when in season 3, Fisk was getting ready to pin all of that stuff on Poindexter. So you get like that black and white flashback sort of stuff. And I was like, wait, we love that episode.
It's a really good
It's a fantastic episode. So I thought that was really interesting that, you know, all of those genres really meld into each other. And it's kind of similarly with that episode of Daredevil. So fabulous work by Tanya Kong, and just like the way everything came together was pretty fantastic. And I like seeing the same kind of the same teams, like the same writers, directors get paired up, because I think then you get like such a great working relationship and probably a shorthand as well that ends up being like really interesting, and you can
really cohesive like visual story.
And then you can play around with stuff. And then we also have some sound design stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. I was picking up on a little bit. I was like, I put my Han ears on. So being our audio,
where those went,
our audio guru. Yeah. So at the ice skating call, when the person in like the witch costume, I assume that's the like the green, and I'm assuming that's the one with the witch in like the gingerbread house, right? Because it's Hansel and Gretel. Yes. I think his name is Randy. When Randy was explaining how the skaters went full toe pick to Bobby, it actually like repeated the same little like bell sound that they used when the sequin fell off and like landed on the ice. that they had just a couple minutes prior. Prior. And I thought that was kind of like an interesting, like, wow. I'm just going to continue. I thought that was an interesting, like, audio callback there, but it also kind of like the way that the camera was on Bobby at that moment, it kind of made it sound like a little light bulb going off in his head. Oh, yeah. And I think that's kind of what it was. He's like, I know exactly what that means. So I thought that was like a really cute little sound design addition. And then there was another point. It's during the first ambulance ride when Hen and Chimney are going to the warehouse, and, you know, Hen is really distracted and Chimney's trying to get her, you know, head back in the game and everything like that. You hear like the siren and there's a lot of sound going on. So you hear like the siren and like there's like the little beeps of, I think, the medical equipment going on, but there's also a little bit underneath that, like it's almost like a little thwoop that continues to happen, and it's on the same beat as the medical supply beeps. And it's kind of, to me, it kind of felt like building tension because, you know, Hen is distracted, she's driving, like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Like, just kind of like flip on a regular interval, and it's kind of unsettling. But nothing bad happens, but they don't do that. But so it kind of like sets up this expectation or this anticipation of something bad will happen, which gets fulfilled on the second ambulance drive where that sound is not present because Hen is like, she's back and she's at it and her head's in the game. And then it's like, whoop, never mind. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the last thing I think I have for that is just another Tim Minear classic of pulling from real life.
Tim Minear special.
the Tim Minear special, which is Ryan Guzman's real life history as an MMA fighter. Like,
which he absolutely had in mind when he was like
writing
like,
this storyline.
This storyline.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's no way.
Yeah. So apparently he was Ryan Guzman had been an MMA fighter for quite a while. I think he talks about it fairly frequently, but there's this one interview. It's with the Zach Sang show. It was on YouTube and it's a fantastic interview. It's like an hour long. So like go watch that anyways. But in it, there's a segment where they are talking about his history as an MMA fighter. And he kind of talks about his like mindset going into fights, which I think all of us found really, really interesting. So that's more like, I thought it was more interesting than just like, and he was an MMA fighter and he fought for like however many years. No, like he like talks about his mindset and everything. So that's kind of cool. Go check that out.
A couple songs for Needle Drop today. We got some, I don't know what category of rock to put this in.
Category of rock?
Millennial underdog bro music.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like early aughts.
Like the world's keeping me down, kind of. It's Shine Down and Papa Roach, like. Anyway, they fit great in the scenes. They're for both of Eddie's fights. So the first one for the first fight is Sound of Madness by Shinedown. Just a couple lyrics to talk about. It says, I created the sound of madness, wrote the book on pain. Somehow I'm still here to explain that the darkest hour never comes in the night. You can sleep with the gun, but when you gonna wake up and fight for yourself. So
ooh,
this is all just very much about like him trying to not think about everything that happened with Shannon. Like that's what all of the fighting is about, because it's driving him, like literally driving him insane. He needs like a physical outlet for it because he doesn't need therapy.
No, why would he need that?
So yeah, I created the Sound of Madness, wrote the book on pain. Like, yes, he is creating the sound of madness in his head by letting all of that just bounce around and up there and not talk to literally anyone about it. And he's writing his own like sentence basically of like what happens at the end of the episode. Like, isn't he suspended? Is he suspended or does he just have to get therapy?
Who, Eddie?
Yeah.
Nothing happens yet.
Nothing happens.
No consequences yet.
So unrealistic. Anyway, but he's writing his own kind of like downfall with this, because like it is a problem. It should have been like realistically a bigger problem. And then you can sleep with a gun, but when you're going to wake up and fight for yourself is very much like thinking about sleeping with a gun is like, it gives you a false sense of security, right? A false sense of like, I'm okay because I have this thing that'll protect me, when really the thing that you're using to protect yourself can be your own demise. So I just thought that was very appropriate. And especially just like, when are you going to wake up and fight for yourself instead of like fighting yourself, fight for yourself.
Oof.
Then we have Born for Greatness by Papa Roach. Sorry. I can't take Papa Roach seriously.
Wait, when was this one playing? Was it during the fight?
Second fight.
Okay.
This is the one where he almost kills a guy. Yeah.
Got it.
I'm a man at war, and I am fighting for all of the broken people, all of the people thrown overboard. They always try to shame us, but they don't speak our language. No, we're not nameless. We're not faceless. We were born for greatness. Okay. This song, actually, I looked up the meaning of what they meant, like Papa Roach, when they like wrote it. They were like, this is about people with disabilities and how like they are also like born for greatness. And I was like, I didn't know Papa Roach actually like had deep thoughts while they were writing lyrics. I think was not familiar with your game.
Yeah. Which is also interesting too, with like relating it to Eddie with Christopher and everything like that.
Yeah. But then the chorus is like, oh, somebody sound the alarm. Oh, a fire was set in the dark. And I know that's very like, oh, he is a firefighter. But no, it's like literally alarm bells are going off in his head.
Yeah.
And a fire was set in the dark. Like the fire is simultaneously like the trauma from Shannon and like what he is doing to himself with Fight Club and not dealing or processing any of those emotions.
No, that's so true. It's like double trauma.
Yeah.
It's punishing himself.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's time you know, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. I don't know really what to take away from that.
I think like expectation.
I think it's maybe expectation and kind of like trying to like find yourself and your place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't really come up with a clear through line for that, but there were definitely a few lines in there.
I think it's expectation because I'm something in themes that I picked up on. So that would be an interesting connection there. Okay, so I think the next two that we have are just the instrumental pieces that we get with Evelyn, the young cellist's story. So the piece that she plays for her gran that I think is the one that she would have been playing at the Philharmonic. So that is Bach's Cello Suite number 1. I think there are 6. I'm not a music.
There's 6.
Yeah, okay. And it's a really beautiful piece. Obviously, it's incredibly famous. But I saw something that Yo-Yo Ma, who is also an incredibly talented and famous cellist, one of the ways that he interprets this piece, this interpretation that he has as he was introducing it before he played it. So he says that the Cello Suite number 1 kind of represents in many ways the water that is flowing right in front of us. It also represents when something very violent and tragic interrupted the flow. Then this piece also includes the rebuilding and the reimagining of the better version of the very first. So I thought that was so interesting because of him saying like it represents something very violent and tragic interrupted the flow, which is quite literally what we see happen with the ambulance crash. Just like totally interrupting Evelyn's life, Hen's life, like all of these different paths coming to converge. And it's just like totally swerved in ways that they couldn't expect. But then, you know, we know Hen will be able to like rebuild later on. It'll just be like a tough moment to get through. So I thought that was really poignant, like a weird connection.
I'm glad you found that quote because like I looked up this song and like the Google AI told me basically like it's about like rebuilding, and I was like, that sounds great. And then I couldn't find the fucking source of what it was talking about. Like, I literally read like 3 articles. I was like, I don't have time for this.
I hate Google AI.
Glad you found it. Me too, but it was like, I was like, where's your source? And I looked at all the sources.
Usually it has little links, but
yeah, I know. I looked at them.
Yeah.
And then our last song is what's playing like at the very end, like as Athena is like comforting or trying to comfort Hen, and she's watching them try and save Evelyn, and it's On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. And it's, oh my God, it's a heart-wrenching song. But I was like, where the fuck is this from? Because I've heard it before. It's been played in a lot of movies and TV shows, but I was like, specifically, what trauma is this niggling in my brain? And it's fucking Bill and Frank from The Last of Us on their last day. This is the song that's playing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, excellent choice in song, but yeah, God.
It's interesting because this song is so often used in movies and TV for moments of like grief or deep contemplation. And I think I read somewhere that it's probably because of like the strings and like the waning strings and everything, that it's like uneasy, but also just like it hits you so deeply. And I also saw that Max Richter said once that this song was an attempt to create luminous music out of the darkest materials. And I mean, I think
he created this whole album like as like in protest of the Iraq War.
It was like 2003, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a definite like dark undercurrent that is so, I think like it just reaches into the depths of the listener.
It's one of those pieces of music where like sound design and like soundtracking can be used so well to kind of like not only enhance the scene, but to kind of indicate where a scene is going to like kind of prepare the audience member. There's no way that you're watching that scene thinking that girl's gonna live with that music playing. Like, you just know something bad, something horrible. Yes, exactly. It is hopeless. It is like, it's heart-wrenching. So yeah, you know, bad things are going to happen when you hear that song.
Yeah. It's really indicating something that like you already know, right? But it's like, oh, now I know for sure. All right. So I think we'll just move into our little red string corner for today. I've connected the dots.
You didn't connect shit.
So it's not really a parallel, but we do see Ronnie Cooper back as captain of I think it's the 136. Well, because we see Lena and it's her station that comes to the Fight Club call. And we see Ronnie Cooper back. And the last time we saw him, he got his arm amputated in 303? Yes, 303. And I was like, wait, what?
Right. Doesn't that mean, right? Like he wouldn't, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with, like if you just got your arm amputated, doesn't that mean you probably shouldn't be still working? I don't know.
As the captain?
As a
captain. A fire station?
Yeah. I don't know.
Physically demanding job. Like, I don't even know that enough time has passed for him to like have been in rehab and like have a very working functional prosthetic arm.
Exactly.
So I just thought that was interesting because I was like, wait, Ronnie Cooper. And I was so confused, and I watched it again and I was like, does he have an arm? And you can see his prosthetic, I think, at the point where they're about to leave the scene, and he calls Lena, says that they're like on their way out, and you can see he does have a prosthetic. So I thought that was really interesting then in the context of everything that maybe Buck went through with his injuries, first the crush injury for the leg, and then all of the everything else that has happened. And it's like, oh, maybe it really was Bobby who was preventing him from coming back.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Lost a whole ass arm.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. At first, I thought we were going to catch them out for like inconsistency, but then I saw the prosthetic and I was like, oh, good.
All right. Well, that's good. Because you pointed that out and I was like, did they just forget?
Yeah.
Or they just didn't want to come up with a new name, but okay.
That's what I said. I was like, is it the same actor who played Ronnie Cooper? And it is. And I was like, what? So then I had to check again and I saw, so he's still captaining, which good for him. And I guess that kind of goes back to the Papa Roach song about, disabilities and stuff.
Yeah. I was just thinking about there's a fic where Buck actually has to get like from the knee down amputated after the fire truck. But he does go back to work, but it's like a very long road.
Okay. And then just for a bit of foreshadowing, it was mostly like within the episode. But, in that first ambulance ride to the warehouse, we get the Chekhov's green light en route to the warehouse call, where it shows Hen pushing the button and it cuts to the light turning green. And that's very important for establishing what happens later on. So you always have to have, and like Chekhov's gun is something in visual media where you show something earlier on in a story and then it becomes more important later, but you have to establish it earlier in order for it to come back and hold that importance later on. So it was the Chekhov's green light. I have more that I want to talk about that with the way they like filmed that stuff later.
I will just say that there's a couple parallels in between characters.
Ooh, yeah.
In this episode. So like we have a lot of paralleling with not just Eddie and Maddie, but Eddie and Hen. And I just think that's so interesting. So like Eddie and Hen are both angry about situations that like they feel like they shouldn't be angry at. Like he's like, I'm angry at a dead person. And she's like, I feel so bad about being angry at her, but I am. And then with Maddie, it's the whole like, I went crazy and did something and wanted to lie about it, but you're making me come out and talk to my brother about it. And Eddie's in the middle of his doing something crazy that he didn't talk to anybody about. So
yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
I like that they like kind of pair up all of those together. And then you have in that instance, like Buck and Chimney and like Bobby and Athena, who are all just like very concerned. It's less like paralleling. I think it would be more like Buck and Chimney parallel in that instance.
Yeah, because they're both going, what's going on with my partner at work?
When I was watching the episode, I was just thinking about like how everyone is like, someone is worried and like trying to reach out to their partner. Like Hen is trying to reach out towards Hen is trying to reach for Karen. Chimney's, reaching out to Hen or trying to be there for Hen. Buck is worried about Eddie. Bobby's worried we don't get to see that because like obviously that episode's past, Athena begins and all that, but I know like Bobby at some point was worried about Athena. Like everyone's kind of like definitely paired off.
Everyone's paired off. It makes sense. They're concerned for their partner because why? They want to have their partners back. Anyways.
Okay, themes. Let's go.
All right. So I think the overarching theme of this episode is so much about control and kind of like the tenuous grip one may have on control, like having it and losing it. And I think that kind of comes up in a couple different ways. So very obviously we get malfunctioning, which is Malfunction, the name of the episode, classic 911 style, where we have it in a couple different ways also, right? So we have malfunctioning in the way that the trust that we have in technology, so like the benefits of technology, but also when things go wrong and the pros and cons there. So you have like the self-driving car, the robot employees, Hen pressing the button, and all of those things, like what happens when those that are meant to be helpful and productive malfunction. And not just technology, but what happens when we as humans malfunction. Like it's tending to operate in a way that's not typical to the character. So Maddie stalking Tara, Eddie doing Fight Club and his impulse truck by, Hen distracted on the job and not compartmentalizing like she normally does. All of these are ways in which like the characters are malfunctioning kind of from the way that they typically act, right? Because something is wrong. So it's a cause and effect sort of thing. And then like still under the umbrella of control is anger, which is something that we've seen a lot of in this first half of season 3. So we see it in this episode specifically as part of grief for Hen and Karen, for Eddie. And then we have, which was started a little, I think, with either rage or triggers with the interpersonal conflict. So like fighting, anger and fighting each other or amongst each other or arguing. So you have like Hen and Karen there. Eddie is physically fighting, all of these things. And also hating yourself for being angry. Like you don't want to be angry, however you are. And you don't want to be. Because like you said, both Hen and Eddie are angry at themselves for being angry.
And sounds really productive, guys.
I know. And then we have subverting expectations. So I think this is kind of a more subtle theme, but it's a little connected to that malfunction, right? Of people, because Hen, who is usually so good at compartmentalizing, putting it away, right? Or letting go. Sorry. And she's so distracted, like at work, and Eddie being impulsive. But then you also have like Bobby being a figure skater. So he's subverting those expectations, right? Because they thought he was a hockey player. You can be both. And I think they do a lot of subverting expectations visually as well. And then communication, again, big theme for this episode. So there's a lot of focus on imploring people to confide in or talk to someone, specifically like when Lena tells Eddie and or Hen is confiding in Athena. Eddie finally confides in Bobby. But then there's also with communication, this like playing a game of telephone, right? Which is kind of like the rumor mill of the 118 because you tell one person and that one person tells somebody else and that person tells somebody else. We also saw this just like not that long ago in 817. This is a really like a fixture of the 118 and how they operate as a group, like that communication style where it kind of like goes through the grapevine where everybody knows everybody's business. So kind of on that aspect, like privacy and like who has the right to know certain things. And then there's stuff about similar to technology stuff like the future is here, right? So I thought of that more in terms of like personal dreams or goals, which may pertain to like career and purpose stuff. So you have like the ice skaters, the cellist, Athena being suspended, Buck trying to stay on Bobby's good side. Specifically, like I like both of your cooking. Eddie's illegal extracurriculars, like all of those things and like what sacrifices one makes to either get there or the consequences that you could face for doing something that like contradicts it, right? And consequences is another theme because we see again Athena being suspended, Eddie's illegal stuff, the consequences of trusting technology with Hen or that investigation that will be impending. So there's a lot here, but I think that's mostly it.
Who's cooking? All right. So Henrietta, she is showing up for work acting like I do, which is out of it. Mm-hmm. So not super normal for her.
No.
When she hands Chimney like the completely wrong thing and he's just like,
like looking at her like she has 3 heads. Like,
Yeah.
who are you? Who body snatched my best friend?
Yeah.
And that's how you know, like, right off the bat that something
is amiss.
Something, what is it? Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. I'm on a Shakespeare kick right now. Like,
clearly.
No reason.
No.
I mean, also, like what we were just talking about with our 817 kitchen scene with like the...
Oh, yes.
We were like, oh, Yorick. And, you know, so there. It's been on my mind because of that.
I don't know.
For sure.
By the time this comes out, they'll forget.
Okay. Anyway, so Hen is not doing well because her foundations at home are all out of sorts. And I think we're seeing that is really where she gets her kind of
strength,
steadfast, just totally focused energy from.
Yeah, it's like when her home life is in order and everything has its place, it is so much easier for her to compartmentalize because that is so neat and organized at home. Like, they may have some issues here and there, but then she's still able to put that aside because that is home life. But she can't do that this time because she has to kind of like pick up some of, I don't want to say the slack because that's not super complimentary, but she has to kind of pick up the slack a little bit. She's getting these concerning calls, and I think Denny calls her at some point. So you know it's like, ooh, not great.
She can't lean on Karen right now to like emotionally or like even completely as a partner. Like, right, like it's kind of implied that she had to do something that normally wouldn't be done by her, which is take Denny to school, and that's why she was late for work.
So it's
she talked about how like he's kind of just being fed like processed stuff and everything's a mess. So it's like she's having to do extra work, but I think it's less that and more so that like she just doesn't have the emotional support of her, and there's just like such a distance, and I think that's really what is creating the problems for her.
But it's exacerbated because everything is
all
like
the other stuff
out of routine. Sure. So like so she compartmentalizes well because she has a routine at home that is very very adhered to. So because that is off its foundations, because of what's going on with Karen, that just, you know, it really, I'm trying to think of like not an earthquake metaphor, but like it displaces everything else, I guess.
I think the conversation in their bedroom is so interesting because of how we know that Hen is really good at compartmentalizing, and that's what Karen sees actually, because she makes a comment about like, oh, I don't know how to do what you do, Hen. Meanwhile, Hen is so worried.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and the anger just develops throughout the episode, but like it's Karen is so out of reach for her that, and in both ways, like Karen can't see how it's affecting her because she thinks that it was like losing, like having a family was just an idea to her. Meanwhile, like the embryos were a part of her. Like definitely like a major disconnect between the two.
Yeah. I thought that whole scene was so interesting because it's so telling of Hen and Karen because they're so not where they usually are, but also, sorry, I'm going to parallel it to 817 with Buck and Eddie, right? Because still, like you just said, Karen is so unreachable, and here Karen is like grieving and thinking that Hen is fine. And that is very similar to kind of what we see in that kitchen where Buck is, you know, I'm sorry that Bobby's like, sorry that I'm sad that Bobby's dead. And like, he's going through this grief, and it doesn't really feel or seem to him that anybody else is feeling it as deeply as he is. And meanwhile, Eddie is also grieving, but Buck is so unreachable for him. So that's also another Eddie and Hen parallel, I think, too. But just just the way that like both of these scenes kind of set up this like this expectation of one of them who is grieving doesn't think the other one is grieving as hard as they are, but are also still like so unreachable for the other one who is grieving. And it's just like these passing ships, like they're just not on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like really interesting to look at both of those together, because Karen says like, I'm sorry, my grief is taking so long.
Yeah.
And she thinks Hen is doing fine. Hen is not doing fine, but Hen is kind of a little more worried about the state of her family right now, as opposed to a prospective future family. Right. So I think they're grieving in different ways a little bit. Like Karen is so in the what could be or what could have been. And Hen is like, well,
we're also here. We're here right now.
And she says that to Athena. Yeah, she's kind of grieving the right now because things are not how they're supposed to be. Yeah, especially for Karen, because for her, she says it wasn't an idea. It was a part of her. And even though Hen is trying to reach out to her, it looks like it's working. And it's not that Hen says anything wrong either. It's just, I think the way that they're communicating are just like a slight miss to each other, because Hen, you see Karen kind of like get a little bit of light back into her eyes when Denny comes in, and then Karen realizes, like, has a moment of clarity almost, that like, you know, she can't be mad at Denny because he's trying to do something so nice, and Hen gets Karen to agree to, you know, go have dinner all together, the family that they have right now. And Hen, like, they're almost there. And then Hen said, like, I was attached to the idea. And that's where Karen kind of like reverts back into herself and isolates, because Hen doesn't understand what it was like for her. But like, that's why they have to communicate about it. But she's communicating about it, but they're not like enough, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really difficult for Hen, because she doesn't feel like she has Karen to lean on right now, because she's so worried about her. So who does she lean on? It's Athena.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, again, with all of this this topic of communication and leaning on somebody, that Athena said when they go to sit down on the patio of Athena's house, that Athena heard what happened with the IVF. So Athena didn't even tell, or Hen didn't even tell Athena. It was Chimney told Bobby, and Bobby told Athena. So we have that like through the grapevine thing again, where everybody's privacy is like not,
like there's just no privacy.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody's business here. But I think it bothers Hen a little less at that moment, because she just needs to be able to talk to Athena about this. And I think, Sil, you said what Hen says with the "we're still here and we need you," and Athena recognizes that, and she is there for her, because she understands that Hen is, I think she said, worried and exhausted, and they're scared.
Yeah, she says, I want to scream at her that we're still here, your actual living, breathing son and your wife, we're here and we need you. And she also says, like, oh, I feel so terrible for saying that out loud.
Yeah, like she's really kind of kicking herself that she's so angry at herself for being angry with Karen, because here you have that war with Hen again between like the logic and emotions, where like she knows that Karen is going through something, that she going through this grieving process differently than she is, and she respects it, but it's also she hates being angry at her, because logically she shouldn't have to be, but that's not, emotions aren't dictated by logic. So
no.
So you have this like lack of compartmentalization between her emotions and logic here, which just make everything so much worse too. So it's like after she talks to Athena, I think it really helps, because then, you know, or it helps in part because she and Chimney are on their way to the warehouse call, and Chimney also kind of like pleads with her like, hey, I need you back. I need you with me. I need you to be my partner. Like, get it together a little bit. And
He's like, I can't do this without you. And it's kind of like him saying to her how she feels about Karen really like kind of hit her and made her wake up.
Yeah.
On the job, at least.
Yeah. So then it's like when they're at the warehouse, she's finally back to regular Hen. It's not that she's not grieving and still having all of these emotions. She's just able to focus more, and she anticipates Chimney's needs, and she hands him the tool that he actually needs to use, as opposed to the ice skating one where he looked at her like she was crazy. And then it's like, she's back. And then the worst thing that could have possibly happened happens. So like, you know, the one step forward, two steps back sort of thing. So it's like she's finally getting back to usual Hen. It seems like she's kind of ready to tackle things in a new perspective and with maybe a little more grace. And then the ambulance crash totally flips that on his head.
Not what she needed.
Literally the last thing. The last thing. It's like Murphy's Law sort of situation. It's bad. It's just bad. Bad for Hen. She was on her way back, and then just because of a malfunction.
Okay.
Are we ready for this downer of a scene dissection? Oh my God.
Fucking Jesus. Okay.
Hey! Where's the fire?
So for the scene dissection, we are talking about the ambulance crash at the very end with the montage and all the everything connected to that. So I mentioned this a little earlier about the Chekhov's green light en route to the warehouse call, where I really loved the way that this whole sequence was filmed, or like both sequences in the ambulance from Hen's perspective. So the first time when they're going to the warehouse, and I mentioned there's like that kind of uneasy sound in there with all of the beeping, and on the way to the warehouse, there is a close up on Hen pushing the traffic preempt button, and the way that it's shot the first time is the aerial shot of the drone with the ambulance going from right to left on the screen, kind of like bird's eye view, and then shows the red light, Hen pressing the button, and then it turns green, right? So it's setting up an expectation. For the second ambulance drive after the warehouse, you know, like right before the crash, there is no cut to the traffic light. So it's just the collision. So the shot sequence is red light, Hen clicks the preempt button, which she does press. It is the correct button. Red light, preempt button, absolute crash. So this is based on the established pattern from earlier, where we're led to expect that Hen pushes the button, it turns green. Hooray! But it subverts this expectation, right? And then when we see from Evelyn's perspective, when we do that little snippet of her getting ready for the Philharmonic and she's driving, we see this aerial drone shot again of her little blue car coming from left to right across the screen. And we don't see the traffic light on her end until the collision has already happened. And there's a shot of like the ambulance and her car already crashed. And you see it kind of in the background. It's like on the right hand side, and it is green, and it's on the side of the road that Evelyn was driving. So the use of the aerial shot for Evelyn having the green light, I think, is an interesting parallel there from the ambulance earlier, because does that make sense? We see the aerial shot. We're expected to think that there's going to be a green light with Hen. So we see the aerial shot again, and there is the green light, even though there wasn't supposed to be this time. So I just thought the way that, I feel like I'm explaining it kind of poorly, but when you look at all three of those shot sequences is very interesting because there's a setup for an expectation, a subversion, and then a parallel to that first sequence. So I thought that was very well done. So like major props to Joaquin Cedillo and Dwayne Milwaukee for director of photography. I just really love that sequence. And then just very briefly, we do see with that cutting back to Evelyn and getting ready for her day, and it's kind of like a weird tonal shift, right? I'm assuming it would have been after a commercial break, so it would have started you off anew. That's another use of the Rashomon effect, which we saw very early in season 3 with 302 and 303. So just as a reminder, it's the phenomenon of the unreliability of eyewitnesses, which I think Hen definitely will play into. The effect was named after a Japanese filmmaker. It is a visual storytelling tool where an event is being shown by different perspectives of people involved of the same incident. So we have like different POVs. So I thought that was like a really great way to utilize that Rashomon effect too. That's my very like technical side of the scene dissection done. Thank you for bearing with me. I just thought it was so interesting. It made my brain go like,
No, it is interesting. I just don't have anything to add.
No, that's fine. Now we can actually talk about what it means for the characters. So sometimes I really hone in on like the technical aspects, but I don't always have like the right language to describe it.
You'd have to start learning some filmography.
Yeah, I would like to.
So Hen, I think, blacks out from the impact.
Yeah. And then she's in shock.
Yeah, then she is in shock in more than one way, like physically and mentally. You know, she tries her very best to save this woman, even though like she shouldn't be the person who's trying to save her because, well, first of all, she's the one who hit her. She was part of the accident. And second of all, she literally just blacked out.
Like she probably has a concussion.
She needs medical care. She needs medical care.
But I think that's also just like so kind of like what we saw with Eddie, where he rushed in to help the guy that he almost killed.
Yeah, it's autopilot.
Yeah, it's Hen being autopilot. That's so core to who she is. Like she wants to help. But then she gets pushed to the sideline. Bobby is just like literally like physically forcing her away because it's procedure and he's protecting her because of that, even though she is absolutely distraught. But even before they get there, Bobby's calling Athena. So Athena can show up on the scene.
He called her on the way for sure. You know, and before we even see them leave the scene, Eddie, Buck, and Bobby were still like back at the scene packing up. Yeah. Finishing packing up the truck. They get the call from Chim for like, they need the backup. They need another medical transport, And then Buck's like, who was driving? Like fearfully asking who was driving the ambulance, like who was driving it. And he's like, Hen. And then it's double time. They're moving.
Yeah. Because it's one of their own.
As fast as they possibly can. Yeah.
But the way that Bobby knew to call, like it was immediate. He had Athena on the phone within like milliseconds, like knowing that Hen has been going through a difficult time and that she hasn't been like her usual self, but knowing that
this would destroy her even if she hadn't been having her.
Oh, exactly. It's just literally the last thing she needs. So he knows that that Athena is who Hen can lean on. And I think it's a really lovely thing that he does. And just the way that he knows Hen and he knows that she needs someone to lean on in this moment. And also because he can't.
Like when, that's kind of like in a way a little, well, it's just these little things that happen behind the scenes because they don't show us that. But like, you know, Buck obviously called Bobby in 217 when Shannon died because Bobby shows up at the hospital.
Yeah.
And he was also suspended.
That's interesting
parallel.
Yeah. But it also kind of continues with that, like the 118 through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Telephone tree. Right.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody's business, but it's also like for good reason because they're all leaning on each other.
Yeah. So Athena shows up and she is trying to hold Hen together. She is trying to support her friend while also professionally be like, you need to be silent. You need
oh my God,
to not
right?
incriminate yourself.
Shut up.
You need to not say your feelings out loud because your feelings are not the truth. Your feelings are not what happened.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so interesting too, with an episode so focused on communication and talking to people, that this is the moment where it's like, okay, you need to stop. You need to stop talking because it's not actually going to do you any good in this instance, even though Hen is like, I want to tell the truth. And Athena's like, you can, but all of the feeling, all of the, subjective stuff that this whole episode has been in, like, encouraging and imploring people to do. It's like, no, cut that out.
To talk about their feelings. It's like, no, once the police get involved, we don't talk about our feelings. We talk about facts.
Yeah.
So while Athena is trying to like physically and emotionally hold Hen together, you see the rest of the team trying to revive Evelyn.
Yeah, Evelyn.
Trying to revive Evelyn, and it's like it's in slow motion, right?
I think some of it is.
Some of it's in slow. I think a lot of the time when it pans back over to the team,
it is,
it's slow motion,
which is probably from Hen's POV,
Hen's point of view.
Yeah, just like things moving so fast, but she's like
she's stuck in this moment.
Oh,
yeah,
you said it, not me.
Yeah, because I don't think about it before I say it. It's just a normal word to me.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, so some of the team, I think like one by one, they keep like looking up at her at some point worriedly. But at one point, Eddie kind of has his hands on Evelyn to take her pulse and like shakes his head really minutely.
Like they're obviously calling time of death.
Yeah. And then it's just like this really incredible, but I'm trying to think of a word that isn't just depressing.
Devastating?
Yeah, it's an incredible but devastating, like, again, slow-mo of each member of the 118 kind of like standing up, looking over at Hen. Chimney's walking towards her, and they all like look heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to lose someone on the job anytime, but when it was your fault,
quotey
that's
fingers.
like unimaginable because that's just like the antithesis of like what your job is, what you want to do.
Yeah, like it's this double whammy of losing a patient or losing a victim because there wasn't anything they could have done to save her, even with all of their training and everything that they do. Like that is who they are as first responders. They're trying to save people. So it's losing that, but also knowing how deeply it's going to affect Hen. And like Chimney looks so concerned. The way Buck is looking over at Hen breaks my heart every time. Just like he looks like they all just look so despondent because they know how it's going to affect Hen, and they also don't know at that point that Hen is not at fault. Like actually technically, like there was a malfunction there. So like as far as they know, she killed a person and then will have to live with it. So it's like they're also maybe seeing how that will affect her going forward with that knowledge of like someone who has dedicated their lives to saving people has now killed someone, which again is so interesting when you parallel Hen and Eddie in this episode, where they're both these people who help and heal and have dedicated their lives to that, but end up causing hurt and physical damage to someone. And how that, again, subverts that expectation that we have of them, but that they have for themselves as well. And is like just one of those, for Hen, this was out of her control. This was actually out of her control. She doesn't know it yet. So she thinks she's just as at fault. And she's putting that burden on her shoulders, just like Eddie puts it on his shoulders. So it's that assumption of responsibility as well. And just like, gosh, there's like literally they're just going through like the same thing so much in this episode. It's a lot.
Well, it's when you work in the medical profession, like everyone has to deal with not just losing patients because like, some patients just can't be saved, making a mistake that costs a patient their life. Like that's just, it happens to everyone. This is very different because this wasn't a patient. This was,
an
her
innocent
in transport with a patient, just someone else on the road. So it's very different repercussions, I guess, like emotionally.
It's repercussions emotionally, but also when Athena tries, and Hen isn't hearing her, but Athena tries to like really instill in her this idea of like, there's going to be an investigation. You need to stop doing what you're doing. So there's also this impending consequences that are going to be hovering over Hen's head. And I think that's interesting too, because like you said, Athena is currently living through the consequences of her actions by being suspended after going after Dennis Jenkins from Athena Begins. Also similarly to, like you said, with Bobby being suspended and
when he was suspended because they found out that he lied.
Yeah. So like consequences or repercussions emotionally and consequences professionally.
Yeah.
Even though she'll be absolved of them. Will she absolve herself?
I do want to talk a little bit about like some of the details and some of these shots that were just so like, I don't know, just add to the like surreal, like kind of out of bodiness, I guess, that Hen's probably experiencing. It's particularly these two things. The first is when they are finally pulling Evelyn out of the car, and all of this bloody sheet music
just like spills out
on her, spilling out, like flying out of the car. Just crazy work. And then it also cuts to a shot of her cello case, like demolished outside of the car. So I think those two things just alone kind of really giving you an idea of how hard of a force this car was hit with.
Yeah.
And by car, I mean Evelyn.
Exactly. I think
because she was in a little tiny like fuel efficient sedan, so she had no chance against
a tank of an ambulance.
Oh.
Yeah. Especially I think they do a very impressive job of showing the catastrophic damage that would be done here. Because if you think about it, an ambulance is already going, I don't know how fast they actually drive, but they're going fast.
I think it just depends, like, 'cause especially when you're in a city, it's hard to go fast.
But they go fast anyways, and they usually get the green light. So like, why they wouldn't even have to stop in an instance like that. So it is going full force, and so was Evelyn at like probably the speed limit. So it's just like, oof, big collision. Like the physicality of it, I think you're right, is really impressive. Like that's just something that 911 does pretty well, I think. Like with these emergencies, they make that's where the realism is.
Yeah, and it's the realism is always in the emotion of the characters, right? So again, I know I mentioned this earlier in general thoughts. I mentioned this earlier in general thoughts. I'm going to bring it up again. Yeah. I knew Evelyn for like 2 minutes, and this was like
so emotionally impactful.
Yeah.
Like it's so well done because they really put us in her POV with that Rashomon effect, showing her little slice of life. It's the most exciting day for her professionally. Like she's
it wasn't even just like
dreams.
A normal day. She's a normal person. Like, no, she's a musical savant.
Yeah.
And the youngest person to ever be in the Philharmonic.
like she has so much to live for, sort of thing. She's reaching her dreams again. Like her future is here, right? And then for everything, and it's the little stuff too. It's her grandma who is so supportive of her. It's her mom and her dad who are like so excited, but also like a little like helicoptery, and her just being so proud of herself, like seeing all these like comments on Instagram of everyone like so excited, and then just to have all of that like ripped away from her in a second because of a technical issue, a technical malfunction. And that is heartbreaking because all of the control is in no one's hands. It's nobody's fault. And that makes it all the more heartbreaking because like it's one of those things that like didn't have to happen, but did. It does a really great job of introducing Evelyn as a character, giving us a very full picture in a very short amount of time. So that way we emotionally connect with her, especially with the instrumental music, like that cello suite number 1, and having Yo-Yo Ma's interpretation of something violent coming in and interrupting the flow of everything like that. That makes it like even more poignant.
Yeah.
So it's emotional from that, but it's also emotional from the other side because from everything that Hen thinks she did at this point. So she's just immediately carrying the burden, but is also in shock and oh my God. I think I wrote devastating like 5 times in my notes. That's the only word I have.
They built up that story and made it have such an emotional impact in like 5 minutes.
Less than, yeah.
Where was this energy at 8:15?
It was in 7:09.
Oh, it was in 7:09.
And that's when they did it. So
anyway,
we know our thoughts on that.
Incredible scene. Hate it.
Hate it so much because it makes us feel bad things.
I just cry.
Yeah.
I cried the first time. I don't think I've cried again.
I didn't cry watching it the 2 times that I watched it.
Yeah,
I was a little
Did
more
I just
focused.
have wires crossed?
No. I think I was very focused on like the visual and the technical stuff. So I was like not as in it emotionally. Well, I was, but like, you know what I mean. I wasn't.
Yeah, it's like you're mentally taking notes.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
I was physically taking notes, but
I think they do a good job of putting us in Hen's headspace too.
They do.
Especially with some of the sound and the distortion. You're hearing the spectators in the background being like, oh, she's the one who, I think she's the one who hit that car. And meanwhile, she's just having a breakdown. Like she's not hearing them properly. Well, she really can't. She shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then I love how like as soon as Athena comes in, then it like clears up the sound, like how they incorporated that.
Yeah.
Those effects in there.
That's so interesting. It's kind of like 801.
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. The sound design, everything about that scene is so well executed. So much thought put into it to like have it make the most emotional impact possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
was this the mid-season finale?
No. There were 2 more episodes.
Oh.
The mid-season finale was 3:10. Seize the
Bro,
day.
I'd be so angry.
that would be awful. Oh my God. That would be terrifying. This aired, I think, November 11th. There was 309 Fallout. The next one was November 25th.
That makes sense.
So that was like
around
the week of Thanksgiving. And then they had one more that was Seize the Day. That's that's the Christmas episode. So that was December 3rd.
That was the diagnosis. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Never mind.
That is the mid-season emotional cliffhanger. All right. Are we on to Eddie now?
Sure.
The one and only person that makes us malfunction? Sorry, that was really bad. It's not my brand.
It's not even true.
Not the one and only.
I'm sorry. The storyline.
He boxed. He boxed too much. He bought a truck. Then he got in trouble.
How much was he making at these fights?
It looked like a lot. Do we need to look up how much a Denali is? Like,
yes. What year was this? 2019?
Oh, for realism.
2019?
Yeah, so it was probably a 2020. Don't say we're not thorough in our research.
This is for you, Tim. This is for realism.
In 2020, GMC Sierra 1500 Denali, when new in 2019, typically ranged between $55,400 to $60,495.
Wow. Okay, so he was making bank.
I was like, are you going to Google how much can someone make at a fight club?
No, I don't need to be on lists.
Makes it so understandable now why Buck was like, don't come crawling to me when you're asking for extra shifts to cover the car payments. Yeah, that's expensive.
That is expensive. Yeah, this man,
he's not acting like himself.
I can't really blame him because he was never taught or given the tools to like really talk about his feelings. So I can't blame him to a certain extent, but this is actually just crazy. Like he could have just joined a boxing gym or an MMA gym. Like he could he could have done this like legally, but I feel like the part of it being illegal was just some added layer of like punishment.
If he were to get caught and like get thrown in jail or something like that, that would be additional punishment for him too.
Yeah.
Because he's not supposed to be doing.
Well, no, it's extra crazy because like he hasn't even put Buck in his will yet. So like if he was going to go to jail, his kid would go to his grandparents.
Yeah. And this is really where we see like when Eddie does things for himself, which are usually actually out of like
he's doing them to himself, like as like self-flagellants.
Like, when he does that stuff, it's because he doesn't talk to anybody else about it. Again, with the communication stuff, it's a form of self-punishment because if he talks to someone about it, then they'll talk him out of it or they'll talk him like into seeing sense. And it's just like, no, that's just for me. But all of those choices that he makes just for him, it's not just for him, are so bad because they're born out of self-punishment, self-flagellation, and a little bit of self-hatred, self-anger. That's the root of all of that, really.
I mean, he's also angry with Shannon and she's dead, so I don't know.
Angry with like Shannon and maybe the universe. I know he doesn't believe it, but like the universe, because so much of that was out of his control. So for him, like with that conversation that he has with Bobby, it really is about control so much. And him like trying to have an iron grip on this control that when he holds on too tightly, it ends up really bad. Really bad.
Like extremely bad. So like the first fight scene we get, you're like, okay, you're still being crazy and you're making money. All right. Then you're like, you just impulse butt a truck. Still being crazy. Okay. He's like, well, the AC was broken and there was a car dealership right there.
He's finding excuses left, right, and center. And that's the thing, too. He keeps excusing these behaviors that are so unlike him. He says that with the truck to Buck. He says that to Lena, like, I was supposed to find an outlet and da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like, these are so flimsy excuses. Buck tells Eddie with the truck, like, that's not like you at all. And Eddie's like, maybe it should be. So it's this like weird, like, he's not exactly living up to expectations because he's being bet against in the fights where he's like more of an underdog in that way. But the way he's acting is just like not him. So I think with that, it's almost like the way he thinks he should be operating in the world, almost like he's trying to assert his own identity through, like I said, like assert his own identity through socially expected means, but that doesn't fit with who he is.
It's kind of like he's trying to cosplay as someone who doesn't give a shit because he would really like to not give a shit.
That's what I was trying to say in a much less pretentious manner. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
I'm just like, assert his own identity through socially expected means.
No, I mean, it makes sense, but I just like had that moment where I was like, no, actually thinking of that line, because I mean, I did go, that's interesting for him to say. Like, maybe it should be. That's not like you at all. Maybe it should be. And I mean, we've talked about it many times already, how Eddie hates himself. Right now is the most he's ever hated himself. So he's really going through it. And like, he does not want to be the guy who, you know, got rejected and left again and lost who was his best friend and dealt with everything else that happened and has, you know, trauma. He's like, I just need to be something different because obviously You know, if you think about the talk he had with Bobby, where he's like, I forgave her for everything. I wasn't enough. He's like, I wasn't enough for her. And, you know, he probably was still feeling that when the lawsuit was still going on.
Oh, definitely.
You know, with Buck.
If he's still feeling it now, like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In that way, it's also when he makes these like big kind of crazy moves, these like wild, like left steps where he does things that are so unlike him. I think that is also like him trying on like different identities. It's him trying to get himself out of his self and trying like cosplaying as someone that he wants to be. And that's one of the reasons why it always backfires so hard for him, because that doesn't belong to him, but also because he's never really been able to explore who he is anyways. I'm not even talking about like the gay stuff. I'm talking about like who he is as a person.
Just who he is on a base level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the second fight, he's just like, there's so many things about that second fight and the aftermath, with the way it was shot, that are so interesting to me, with like the lighting.
Yeah.
Like, especially when he's like up in the loft or whatever it is.
He's all like shadowed and
well, it's shadowed, but there's also like this very warm, like orange light.
But not warm in like inviting. It's very orange. So it's like off-putting. It's like caution, caution signs everywhere. It's great lighting in that warehouse. It's so interesting.
It is really cool.
I think it's so interesting with this fight too, that there's so much duality going on for Eddie. And like this goes for Hen as well. And I'll talk about that in scene dissection. But for Eddie, you know, he's already doing these very like un-Eddie things by joining this fight club and everything. But, you know, the Eddie that we know is someone who helps and heals. And it's interesting that the person that he's trying to be is the person who almost kills a man by kicking his nose into his brain. And then he tries to like save him. But so there's like this duality here that I find really interesting. And it kind of made me think a little bit about like kind of this throwaway line, which haven't pulled this out for a little bit, but there are no throwaway lines in 911 from the ice skating call when Bobby reveals that he was junior pairs champion ice skater. And everyone's like, what? Lore drop. But Eddie is the one that said, I thought you were a hockey player. And Bobby responds with, who says you can't do both? So there's something about this like duality of balancing masculine activities with like something more typically feminine, right? Because everybody thinks figure skating is more of a women's sport. And the way that that scene is immediately followed by that first fight for Eddie. So, that first match. So it's Eddie leaning into this hyper masculinity, which I think could probably read into some more stuff about how like, you know, healing people, nursing and medic stuff is sometimes thought of as like a woman's thing, and which it's not. But, you know, those like really stupid gender roles, and how Eddie is kind of by almost killing a guy in this very hyper masculine arena and then saving him, and he's kind of like living in both of those at the same time.
Also not reveal yet, but the ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
So there's that little Bobby Eddie nugget for you. Bobby being a figure skater, and Eddie being a ballroom dancer.
I also think it's very much like you can see, like the audience knows who Eddie is, and then we're reminded of who Eddie is, and he kind of is to a certain extent, where it's like, yeah, oh, I'm a fighter, but as soon as someone is in danger, it's not, oh, I'm out to protect myself, save myself, and get out of there, which is what most people would have done.
Yeah.
It was no, like, I need to save this guy. And it wasn't even because he hurt him.
It's just the right thing to do.
It's just the right thing to do, and he has the means to do it.
That's what's so ingrained in Eddie. That's like at the core who Eddie is. Someone who wants to help people. He even does it to his own detriment. Like he calls 911 and basically almost rats himself out, because he could very easily have been picked up by the police again, and they probably wouldn't be so lenient this time.
And he could have left. And he could have left then after he called 911, but he wanted to stay and see that the guy was okay. He wanted to make sure he was okay.
Even
Which
after
is stupid, but
I know. Even after he asks Lena to let him know when like which hospital they're bringing him to. And I think that's that responsible Eddie coming back in. It's like he really can't escape the person who he is, even though he's trying so hard to, because he hates it. And he hates hating it.
No matter where you go, there you are.
And I think Ryan's performance with Eddie in like this episode, this scene, and also when he talks to Bobby as well, is so good because he just looks so bone tired and done with everything. It's like those half-lidded eyes, just like there's like almost no life in him at this moment, even though like to the outside, it looks like he's doing fine. Again, you're seeing that with Hen, where to other people, they look like they're fine and they're not going through shit, but they really are. And it's just like it's done so well. It's done so well. Like Eddie, when he's talking to Lena, like he hates hearing what he knows to be true. Like she's talking sense.
Yeah.
He knows what she's saying is true and correct, and he should listen to her, but he's trying to bury it down anyway. He's so like kind of batting her away and her concern. He's just like, whatever, fine, go away. But I think that's like, it's acted very well. And then can we talk about finally Eddie talking to somebody, confiding in somebody, finally communicating to somebody? Thank God. Not everything, but
he was kind of forced to.
Yeah. Yes. His hand was forced.
Come sit down. I'm your friend Bobby. It was like,
that was
I am
Captain
your
Bobby.
dad boss. Here's my disappointed, angry face. Like, talk to me. I love this scene. It's one of my favorite Eddie scenes, actually. It is so much of the core of like who he still is. Like he still has a lot of these same problems, not to the same extent, but it is very much like I'm all he has. Like I have to hold it together.
That control.
Like I have to be strong, right? And I just don't think he ever learned how to let go of this anger with Shannon. And underneath all the anger with Shannon is just hurt. It's just feeling hurt and rejected and left again. And it's not even that she died. It's that she was already leaving. And you see that moment of realization cross Bobby's face when it just completely like softens when he confesses that like, when he's like, you know, she left again. And he's like, she died. And he's like, no, she wanted a divorce. And Bobby's face is like, yeah, everything about you makes sense now.
Yeah. Cause it's Bobby finally realizing and understanding why Eddie thinks he's such a failure for everything that he's done right for Christopher, right in his career and it really seems that Bobby sees Eddie in this moment. And I think sometimes maybe more than like Bobby had seen Buck, you know?
Oh, he always saw Eddie better than he saw Buck.
There's also something so deep that Bobby can relate to with Eddie in losing Shannon and hating yourself for things that are out of your control.
I think they handle emotions the same way too. So it's just easier for him to understand how Eddie's brain works.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they do operate much more similarly. And yeah, so that whole conversation, it's all about like Bobby really gets to the nitty gritty of it, where it's like it's all about control. And because Eddie is the person who keeps it together no matter what life throws at him. And Eddie says lots of people have it worse. And it's just like,
which is just such a bullshit thing, because it's like, sure, people have it worse. Does that make your own needs and feelings and wants
any less
meaningless
or less valuable or less valid? Absolutely not. No. That's your experience that you're living in. Like,
that's also not how psychology works. You can't go, well, suck it up because, you know, people have it worse than you. What?
That's probably something that he learned growing up.
For sure.
That sounds like a Ramonism.
It is a Ramonism.
Sure.
Well, actually, no, it's both of them.
Yeah.
It's both of
it
them.
goes along with the whole, like, just suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all of that kind of just toxic bullshit. The toxic masculinity of, like,
yes,
one of the reasons why men's mental health really needs to be destigmatized is because they are taught this kind of shit.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very normal for women to be emotional, to show their emotions outward, to talk about their emotions with their friends.
That communication is a lot easier.
It's not only expected, it's something that good friends, like, try and people to do when they see their friend is going through something.
It's how people bond.
Yeah. But I just know that, like, kids, I mean, I can tell you, just like with 2 younger brothers, the way I was taught to deal with my emotions, it's different from the way they were taught to deal with their emotions.
Which is wild. Because you would think, siblings would be taught the same thing.
No. So yeah, that's absolutely instilled in him from his parents. And still fucking him up to this day. So I also think that when Bobby says, I just don't want you to have to lose everything before you allow yourself to feel something.
I love that line.
I love it. It's so good. It works for Eddie so well. But Bobby would know. Bobby would know, because
rock bottom.
We now know in hindsight, everything that happened to him that led to his, like, addiction was from his childhood, and he never dealt with that. He never dealt with all of the trauma from his father, and that led him to his addiction, which led to him losing his family.
In one of the most traumatic ways possible.
Yes. And then it wasn't until after that happened that he allowed himself to open up and deal with those feelings. And,
for Bobby, it was him reaching rock bottom again at the very end of 104, where Hen and Buck find him having relapsed, and he just, like, collapses and asks for help. So all of that feeling that he was pushing away just, like, washes over him like a tidal wave. So I'm sorry. So he really understands the potential for Eddie to fall even further than he is right now. At what point would it be too late? And I think he also is protective of Eddie because Eddie also has Christopher, and he knows how important Christopher is to him too, and doesn't want Eddie to do anything to jeopardize that, because realistically, him being in Fight Club is very potentially jeopardizing to keeping Christopher.
Having custody of his child. Yeah.
So, like, it's at that moment, it's that line that Bobby says that kind of gives Eddie permission to break down. And I think we see this a lot when he has these really emotional, like, breakthroughs or moments. It's because somebody kind of prods him a little bit, gives him permission to open up those floodgates, because he's trying so hard to keep them at bay and keep them closed. But if someone else gives him permission, then he kind of allows himself to be swept away with that. And he tells Bobby about Shannon and about the divorce. And I think it's the first time, the only person that Eddie has ever talked about
tells
the divorce.
Anyone. Never talks about it again.
Because it
probably doesn't even tell Frank.
No, why would he tell Frank? But like everything that Eddie says about, like, Chris needs him to be in control because because Eddie can't let him down again. And all of these things that he says where he stayed away too long and it broke Shannon. He couldn't stop her from running away. He couldn't bring her back home. He let her back into his life. All of these things, he knew better that Shannon was going to break Christopher's heart again. All of those things, he is putting himself to blame for.
Oh, yeah.
So deeply.
What would you call that? It's not a savior complex.
It's a martyr complex?
Maybe.
Something similar like that, but taking on the fault of all of these things that are not his. Fault
because, like, he was doing that his entire childhood too. So again, that's why
it's all of that responsibility that Eddie was brought up to take on. And again, he never learned that, like, some things don't have to be your responsibility. Some things
everyone's
you don't have to
individual
shoulder.
Actions are their own responsibility.
In addition to what we just said, about how Bobby sees Eddie and they have like that connection there. Remember like with Dose when we were talking about Bobby being Atlas and shouldering the universe and everything. Eddie does that too, kind of to a little bit smaller scale, but it's the same thing. He's just shouldering so much that he doesn't need to. And it's also, I think it's very interesting phrasing when he says he knew that Shannon would break Christopher's heart again. He never talks about his own. It's always Christopher.
But see, and that's where sometimes that's where I feel like he uses Christopher as like a substitute or like
a shield.
A shield, because to me, I'm like reading between the lines when he brings up Christopher. Really, I feel like it's his way of also kind of like talking about himself, but without realizing that he actually is admitting to that.
I think that's exactly what it is. It truly is. Like both layers. Yeah.
I see both things because she didn't break his heart as in he was heartbroken that she didn't want to be with him.
No.
It was the heartbreak of being left and not being enough.
And not wanting to be with Christopher and
Yeah.
And so he's just so mad at himself. And he says like at the conclusion, he's like, he's so mad at her and he's mad at himself because he's mad at a dead person. But also because he's mad at himself because he forgave her for everything, but it wasn't enough and he wasn't enough. So it's all of that. This is like one of those pivotal like Eddie scenes where it's just like you see so much of him emotionally, and so much of that is just like that rage turned inward on himself, wanting to be enough, being too responsible, trying to maintain control, and like hating all of that's his plight.
If you take this conversation, especially that part of the conversation, and you put it side by side with the conversation he has in 709 with Fake Shannon.
Yeah. Fake Shannon.
It's the same thing.
It is.
Yeah.
He never dealt with any of this. It's broken. I'm broken.
Oof.
It's you left. I didn't get a goodbye. Like, it's the same shit. Like, he never dealt with this.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not one of those things that you can like be done with dealing with, right?
No, but you have to.
But you have to. But you have to like learn coping mechanisms to be able to like deal with it on the daily.
Fake Shannon is the most therapy he's had out there.
Yeah.
Because I remember like her showing up and us being like,
oh no.
no, leave. And we were, then I think Syl was like, wait, maybe it's therapy.
It was role play therapy, which is
not great, but
but we're like, well, it's better than the nothing that we've had for the past
at least he was
6 years.
Confronting himself about some of it. And like, Han, you're right. It really is. I would love to look at these scenes together and like compare them.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that sometime. But it's just like, this is who Eddie is, like at his, like bearing it all.
This is his root trauma, his root driving force. It like, if you want to show someone who Eddie is, just show them this conversation. Yes. Like, it shows you what he's motivated by, and that's Christopher. It's doing everything for Christopher. He does not care. He does not care about himself, like, at all.
No.
It's showing the motivation is Christopher. It's showing that he blames himself for literally everything that ever goes wrong with Christopher. Not ever, not for everything, just with Christopher.
Yeah, that's fair.
With everyone else, that's a different story. That's a different conversation completely. But with Christopher, his fault always. Shows you that he has capital A abandonment issues.
Yes.
And that he has never felt like he's enough. He never felt like he was enough for his parents. He never felt like he was enough for Shannon. He never felt like he was enough for Christopher. Like, that's just it. That's his character.
I wonder if there's ever a point where he felt like enough-ish. If like maybe like moments when he's on the job or like moments when he was in the army. But I don't think so, because so much of that is attached to the not enough parts.
No, he doesn't think he's enough. Like when you think about like how he saved people in the actual, like while he was in the army, and he He was like, oh, I just did the right thing, even though I got a silver. He doesn't think he's worthy enough, even though he was
of the commendation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at moments like in 704, right, where he does the partial Raboa, and you see that like 804, and he has that brief moment of like elation of like, oh my god, like I saved him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was great. And then the kid calls him dad, and all of the guilt and the shame and the self-hatred just
rushes right back in. No,
like a fucking semi-truck.
Oh my god. You're so right. Any moment where I think he does feel like enough, I think is immediately superseded by feelings of self-hatred.
And he punishes himself. We know this. I mean, we knew this before Father Brian pointed it out, but you know, we know it for sure now after season 8, where it's like you don't feel worthy of joy or forgiveness, and he punishes himself. Like he's been doing that earlier than Chris leaving.
I think he's been doing that earlier than we met him.
Oh, for sure. But it's like anytime he feels like he did something good, I'm sure verbally he's like, but remember this one thing you did?
Yeah.
Remember this other thing you did? Like, I just don't think that he allows himself to like ever feel
comfortable,
like
confident.
No, I don't think it's ever been enough. I don't think he's ever like gone through a day and been like, I did good today. I feel satisfied.
That inner self-critic in him is so loud that it almost takes up all of his brain space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this makes it even that much more interesting when we look at how we were introduced to Eddie with that veneer of competency and confidence. And like we're seeing now with, I mean, we knew it was a mask, right? But like, it's so fascinating to see how shallow that mask is and how deep everything else is that he's trying to push down so hard, because it's just like he does not feel this in the slightest, but he puts it on and he plays the part because that's what's expected of him, and he knows that.
It's that eldest daughter syndrome.
For real.
Making sure like everything outside is, you know, perfect, being successful outwardly, that nothing can go wrong. Meanwhile, you're like beating yourself up internally.
Yeah. I think the closest, and like we don't ever see this, but I feel like the closest he ever comes to like a full day of just like not beating himself up is like when it's just him and Chris for a whole day, or him and Buck and Chris, and they're doing something that is focused on Chris, and like he's really happy, and then he can just like not think about it.
Also, maybe the basketball pickup game before he gets injured.
How would you?
He looks like he was having so much fun.
He was.
Yeah, because his book was
fun
there.
And fancy free. Yeah, exactly.
And then his book did.
So it wasn't a full day, but it was momentary, maybe.
How did you get him to come? He always says no when I ask.
Yeah. Oh my God. Eddie, why are you the most character ever? Like
the best character of all time.
I love him.
Anyway, I need more Eddie A plot.
Yeah.
In my life.
Yes, please.
Thank you. He's so interesting. There's so much to do with him because you've let him wallow in all of the shit for so long. It's still there.
Yeah.
Like there's still so much of that to dig into.
And it's not even that far under the surface. It's there.
This has been a evisceration of Edmundo Diaz's psyche.
I mean, it's not our fault. The episode was.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's so interesting.
All right, let's talk about some gay stuff,
please.
My God. Okay. All right. I'm going to start off with my grasping for straws things.
Love it.
So like Rachel was talking about subverting masculine expectations earlier, and I went, oh, interesting, about like at the ice skating rink when like they find like Bobby reveals that he was a champion pairs figure skater, and
Eddie thought he was just a hockey player.
I thought you played hockey. And he's like, you can do both. Walks away. So, well, first of all, this piece of lore did not exist then, but like looking at that now, especially knowing but Eddie ballroom dancing. So interesting. So interesting. Because he does ballroom dancing, which is looked at as more of like a feminine thing. And he also does like, what does his character do? It's not MMA. It's
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai. Yes. You know, he does that and he boxes. He does all these masculine things. So I don't know, just something about subverting masculine expectations. And like, Eddie, you can be both. You can be masculine, but also soft and also...
and also for Buck, like...
Also watch telenovelas.
Yes.
Both is good. Yeah, and he watches telenovelas too. Exactly. Yeah. So like, again, Eddie really does kind of exist in this middle, like the middle of a Venn diagram, right? In that, but so often he feels like he has to lean one way.
Yeah. Thanks, Ramon and Helena. I hate you.
Feeling like he has to perform.
But also, this can go for Buck too, with like, you can do both. Okay, no las dos. Bisexuality.
It's true.
Wow.
I think I specifically glommed onto Eddie because
that's
he
the
said
more
it to Eddie.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we have that whole scene with Buck and Eddie when Eddie pulls up in his, what I like to call his denial truck.
Oh my God. How have we not been saying that the whole time?
I say it in my head.
No, you should have said that out loud like a while ago. The denial truck. I love that.
What is he denying? So many things.
Everything.
So many things. But he rolls up in it and Buck is like, what the fuck is happening? Like he's making the small talk and he's smiling, but he's like, so interesting. Like, why did you get this? He says, I didn't know that you were thinking of getting a new car. Turns out he wasn't. But also, I had a flash forward to 809.
Yes, I did too. I had this same flash forward.
When Eddie's like, I didn't know you were thinking about adopting a dog. It's like, because they tell each other everything. It's like they can't make major life decisions without purchases without consulting the other person. That's married behavior.
They tell each other everything except when Eddie doesn't tell Buck about the big stuff that he should absolutely be telling Buck about. But that's not usually on an impulse like this, which is why it's so weird in Buck's POV.
In the scene in Buck's kitchen, we're talking about Hen, like, because Chimney is like, there's something going on with her, but she won't talk to me. And Buck's like, yeah, there's something definitely going on with her. Eddie, too. It's like purpose of nothing. Do you think it's the Santa Anas? Do you think your best friend purchased a $60,000 truck because of the Santa Ana winds?
He just really wanted to talk about
He really wanted to talk about Eddie. It's relatable.
He was looking for any excuse.
So then, Chimney basically outs Maddie, makes her...
Oh my God, yeah.
Makes her, tell that story. But then Chimney's like, wait, so what's going on with Eddie? Sounding so confused because no one noticed that anything was off about Eddie other than Buck.
That's so true.
Not even Bobby.
Everyone noticed Hen.
Yeah.
Everyone clocked that.
Because she visibly wasn't the same at work. But like Eddie is so good at his masks.
Yeah.
His neat little masks. So he was completely the same at work.
It's like how Bobby describes him. Oh, you're the guy who always like seems to keep it together.
Exactly.
Keyword seems.
Exactly. But it's also so interesting too that nobody else noticed because like what we were talking about with Eddie, he's just like his eyes are half masked. He's got no light in them. He's just like, a little short tempered and just like a little dodgy with things. And nobody noticed except for Buck. Like, that's not like you at all.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about too. He noticed because of like the truck, obviously. He was like,
that's a big red flag.
That's not like you. That's not impulsive, Eddie. But I also think he was flashing back to like a couple other things, including like
the bruises.
Yes.
The bruises. And when they hugged
in Monsters.
And he gave him that look that he was like why are you in pain from a hug? What is happening?
Why did you cringe back from our very lovely super bro hug?
Why do you hate me,
bro? Why do you hate me and want me dead?
Why didn't you want to hug longer when we were making up after our divorce and then you looked like you were in pain?
Yeah, I think he's really connecting the dots of like, there's something to miss here. He is not himself.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going on, but he doesn't, like, he has no idea what, but he knows that something's up. And that's just such a, like, when you're partners, romantic partners with someone, you should, if it's like a healthy relationship, know them better than anyone else. Like, you know them better than their best friend. You know them better than their family.
Inside and out. Yeah.
Inside and out. So you will pick up on little things that other people won't.
Okay, so back to the ice skating pile up. The cold opens for this kind of stuff are so interesting because it actually like gives you so much in there. So you have the two skaters who are playing Hansel and Gretel. I don't remember their names. They were in a relationship. They were currently in the process of breaking up, which also, like, who else have we seen have a divorce / breakup in this season?
Because they wanted to let go, let them do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's part of it too. So when they are fighting and breaking up and just like having a literal lover's spat, it's the witch, Randy, again, who is hilarious and just says, "You two are exhausting." Where have we heard that before, except it's a direct callback to the grocery store fight with Buck and Eddie, because Eddie called Buck. Eddie said, "You're exhausting" to Buck. So you have the use of this same phrasing here in relation to an actual romantic couple going through a breakup. And the same stuff was said, like it absolutely recontextualizes the grocery store scene as romantic too. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then they're also talking about how the skater who plays Gretel is Hansel's partner. Like, they wanted to be partners, and he was breaking up with her because he wanted her still, like you said, to live her dream, but her of being on Disney on Ice. But she was kind of giving it up because that's not her dream. Her dream is to be with her partner, the guy who plays Hansel, which is also very similar to Buck giving up the settlement to stay with the 118 and Eddie as his partner. Like, he wants to continue on with his dream with the people that he loves, specifically Eddie as his partner. There's a lot of emphasis on partner here in Platonic for like Chim and Hen. But then you also have romantic partners like Chimney and Maddie and Bobby and Athena. And a lot of that parallels Buck and Eddie being romantic partners. That's all I had about that. But the you two are exhausting. Like, come on.
I don't know why I didn't. When I watched it, I didn't connect it to the "you're exhausting" scene, but I was just like, wow, I feel like I've seen this fight before. I've seen this film before.
Because you did.
So interesting, because just to bounce off of what Rachel was just talking about, she says, "You broke up with me so I wouldn't turn down the job." What does that sound like? If you need to be pissed at me to make this easier for you, then be pissed off.
Yep. Oh my God.
Same energy. Also, the same energy as like trying to, selflessly remove obstacles from your romantic partner's life, even if that obstacle is you.
Jesus.
That's a great way to put it.
So like in this case, it was her career ambition. But, with Buck and Eddie in season 8, it's the obstacle is that, Eddie needs to sublet his house so that he can go be with Christopher, because he needs to do that because that's where he belongs. And, Buck does that. So interesting.
It's like this sacrifice for romantic partners, which I don't think I really talked about in themes, but sacrifice, I think I was grasping at straws, but it like makes more sense in this context with what I think I mentioned it a little bit, but like specifically sacrificing things for your partners, your romantic partners. In the context like this, like that's something.
So interesting for them to continue paralleling so many people who are romantically with each other. Could mean nothing. So sure.
Just for kicks and gigs.
Technically, we already talked about this when I was talking about like how interesting the conversation in the bedroom was.
The HenRen and Buddie parallels with dealing with grief between this and 817.
We didn't talk about it in a romantic context, dealing with grief and how you process that as a couple.
Yeah, we talked about it in like a more general grief way, but just also the fact that it was Hen and Karen who are romantic, and how similarly that
they're literally married.
And how similarly that lines up with 817, which again, we have said that kitchen fight, we've said that is a married couple having a dispute.
Marital dispute.
Yeah.
And I think it's very normal when you are grieving together as a couple, something, for there to be a lot of tension there, because everyone grieves differently. And it's very rare, I feel like, that people dating each other, married to each other, grieve the exact same way. So there's going to be a lot of just like layered emotion, some resentment towards each other because one perceives the other as not as sad as they are.
And it has similar beats too, right? Because like we see Eddie and 817 talking to Hen and Karen, the actual married couple.
Oh, yeah.
And then here we have Hen talking to Athena and talking about how she's worried and frustrated and exhausted. And I mean, so of course the conversations are very different because like Eddie is keeping it a little bit more close to the chest as opposed to like how like Hen is more comfortable to speak about it, which really is because at the end of the day, they're not actually in that level, that stage of that relation, you know, in their relationship. They're not married, even though we all know it is kind of, you might as well be.
They're married coded.
They're married coded. So like, and that's where, you know, what is it?
Oh, my ears has said they act like a married couple.
Which is, I feel like when Karen asks him, oh, you're worried about Buck's level of worry, it's like, you know, like side eye, eyebrow raising, like
how interesting.
Yeah. Please say more, even though we know that he wasn't going to say more. Honestly, Hen kind of saves him from having to say more.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have done that.
But that is such an interesting parallel that like
to extend
they went to talk to someone else about the grief.
Yeah.
Right. And not just their own grief, but the grief of their partner and how the grief of their partner is affecting them. And then after having that talk, went to talk to their partner to try and talk to them about their grief. And it goes horribly.
Yeah.
And there ends up being more resentment at the end of the conversation than there was at the beginning.
That's so clever of you to like realize to broaden the scope of this parallel here to those other conversations is kind of wild.
So I think we did talk about like how the level, like everyone's level of grief or having to get over grief is like different for everyone. But I think when Hen says the line where she's like, we're here, your living, breathing son is here, you know, when she's expressing all of that to Athena, it's similar to like how, like with Eddie, how he feels, where he like that Buck hasn't asked them about like how he's dealing. I feel like that's similar. It's like Buck is so internalized in his own grief that he's not like, you know, looking to his surroundings and being there for Eddie. Like that's kind of
seeing what his partner needs. He's so wrapped up in his own grief. He's not seeing how much his partner needs him.
Yeah. Which we know he's so attuned to Eddie because he notices things about Eddie when he's feeling off his game that nobody else does. So that really does show like how deep Buck is that he can't notice that, because otherwise he absolutely would have. He would have clocked it if he weren't dealing with his own stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to like watch more.
So smart.
Good job, us.
Yeah.
Good job, Sil.
I can't wait to like kind of like the same thing with Athena parallels. I can't wait to. I feel like I'm more familiar with like Madney and Buddie parallels than I am with like Athena and then HenRen paralleling Buddy.
There's
I feel
so
like the
many
HenRen Buddy parallels are slept on.
Yeah.
I really feel like they are.
Which is so funny because it's like, it's the other same sex couple. You would think like, yeah, I think there's a lot more there.
One of them has a biological kid that looks like the parent and the other parent, the step parent.
Well, it's not actually biologically related.
Biologically related.
Yeah.
But it's like Denny still looks like he's related to Karen.
Yes.
By some like magic of science. Like, yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to like hone in on more of the HenRen and Buddy parallels because they are slept on. Like I think you have to just like dig a little deeper for them. But like, and maybe it's also because a lot of those parallels are like the HenRen stuff is parallel to more recent Buddy stuff.
Yes.
Because Buddy's relationship, like Buck and Eddie's relationship has grown and developed and matured so much.
Yeah.
And with Hen and Karen being like the most established relationship on the show. Like they've been married for longer than Bobby and Athena and Jimmy and Maddie.
Yeah.
So like they have the longest relationship.
Yeah.
Compared to everyone else. So
yeah.
Buck and Eddie have like the second
by
longest
far
relationship.
Like how old is Denny in the first season? Like is he similar aged to Christopher?
That's what I would
feel
think.
like he was a little younger though.
So like 6?
Maybe like 5. Because he and Harry are similar. Okay, wait. He and Harry were similar ages. Harry was like, I think Harry was like 7. Wait, but Denny, I think, is younger than Harry. I don't know.
They're putting his birthday on 911 Wikipedia as sometime between September 2009 and May 2010.
Okay, so that would be 8 at the start of the series? 8-ish.
So they've been together for like almost 16 years.
Yeah.
When all these other couples are starting to get together in the beginning seasons, like they've been together for 8 years.
HenRen
like
is our established relationship AO3 tag. Like,
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I can't wait to find more.
Yeah.
It's like a little like panning for gold.
I don't like a gold rush.
Jesus. Okay.
Remember, don't join an illegal fighting ring.
But if you do,
take a buddy with you.
Thank you for listening to the Buddy System podcast from start to finish.
We literally cannot shut up about 911, so please come talk to us on your favorite social media platform.
We are at Buddy System Pod everywhere. That's BUDDIE System Pod. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get a personal shout out in the next episode. The Buddy System is a Nerd Virgin Media production featuring music from Divinity.
Can't get enough of the buddies? Subscribe to our Patreon for access to exclusive content and our Discord community.
Catch you next time, and don't forget,
bring a buddy with you.